You're listening to the Michigan State University Center for Community and Economic Development's podcast, Transforming Tomorrow Together. In today's episode, we'll hear from Theo Van Hof and Reagan Winnie as they talk about AmeriCorps Service and why service is important.
Hi everyone, my name's Reagan Winnie, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA here serving at the MSU Center for Community and Economic Development, and today we're going to talk about AmeriCorps Service. And with me, I have Theo Van Hof, a fellow service member that has been here at the center with me for the past year, and we're just going to go over what his service has been like and why AmeriCorps is so important. So Theo, could you just briefly explain what your role has been here at the center?
Yeah, excellent. So what I've spent my time here is just doing community benefits. And for people who don't know, community benefits are legal agreements, private contracts between developers and communities. And then cities are often involved in them in some ways. We kind of started this process studying the Detroit Community Benefits Ordinance and some of the requirements there that lead to a community benefits agreement. And the city does get involved in certain instances in sort of like a mediator capacity. But that's kind of been the work I've been on, and it really focuses on equitable development and how we can foster environments for more holistic development that has community voices at the center of the development process.
Right. And for those who don't know about AmeriCorps, it's a year-long service term, and every project is different. So Theo's is focusing on community benefits, while mine is more focused on circular economy. So it ranges all over from direct service to indirect service and capacity building, which is what we err on the side of here at the center. But our year is coming to an end, and Theo is actually leaving this Friday, so we thought it would be a good opportunity for him to share his insights and how it's prepared him for the future. So why don't you tell everyone what your upcoming role is?
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing communications for the Michigan House of Representatives here in Lansing, Michigan. So I'll be over towards the Capitol, just across the street, and I'm very excited about that opportunity.
Yeah, and what skills do you feel like you've gained as a VISTA that helped you in your interview process and land this job?
Yeah, certainly. That interview was one I prepared for, but then you kind of are just in the interview and you're just kind of in the flow state, and you kind of have to fall back on the things that you know. And for me, it was just, I can just talk about my experience here. I can just talk about all the things that I learned, all of the things that I did not know or I was worried about not knowing, last June, last July, and then just how easy a lot of that sort of stuff has become for me. And so I think that communication is a big one, just simple things like setting up meetings, hosting meetings, reaching out to people, calling people, that's always a bit awkward, but learning how to do that on a consistent basis and just getting better at that sort of professional speak. But then also being able to be conversational with people even in professional settings, I think is useful, and was especially useful in an interview setting where you're trying to earn a position, but you also don't want to come across like you're ChatGPT basically. So trying to be a person while also still being professional, I think is something that this position and this year has really helped me, excel at. It really strengthened a lot of that communication skills, because I think that really is the number one skill these days. So many jobs can be replaced by AI and automation, but I think that the number one thing that is going to be difficult to replace is going to be communication. How do we talk to each other? How do we deliver information to each other? And I think that AI still struggles with that, because for the most part, it's just copying how we do it. And so humans will always be the best at that. And so I think that this position, and I think that AmeriCorps broadly, as a gateway for your professional experience, really allows you to practice your communication skills. And that was super useful when I went and sat in an interview.
Yeah, I feel like AmeriCorps is so unique because you really get, your boots on the ground in the community, whether or not that is directly with community partners or if you're having more of a facilitator role. What do you feel like you gain being in AmeriCorps that maybe, say, you did an internship that you wouldn't?
Yeah, I think that, if you do an internship, especially if you're working for maybe a private company or something, you're learning a lot about maybe that company, and you're learning a lot about why they do what they do, and maybe why it's important. Okay, and that might be fine, but I think that for AmeriCorps specifically, you're learning a lot about your community. Yep. And you're learning a lot about the place that you're living in, and even if you're not living in, or even if you're not from the place that you're going to end up serving in, you still end up learning a lot about that community. You learn about the local partners. You learn about all of the great work that's already being done. That's kind of one of the big things that I realized here is that while MSU might be doing certain things and certain projects or whatever, there's still all of these other partner organizations that we can work with that are doing their own work every day. All these nonprofits that are doing all their own work every day. All these community members that are advocating for their own passion projects and things like that. And so I think that AmeriCorps, as opposed to an internship, is really about learning about where you are and learning about why it matters that you care about where you are. And so it's not just about a company or one organization. It's about all of the companies and all of the organizations and all of the institutions that make a community great. It's about schools and churches and hospitals and the local businesses and things like that. And so you learn just how important every one of these institutions is to a community's overall health.
Wow, I think that's a really great answer. I know even before your service, you were so driven by community and just community work in general. Is there anything that you feel like you learned that you'd never anticipated in this role?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a lot that I didn't know I was going to have to do. It's a small example, but like a simple program like Canva. I had never used that before coming here, or just simple things like that. I didn't know like a lot of random like PowerPoint tricks or something. I didn't know how to edit things, super well. But just learning those kind of more like hard skills, I think, was interesting. And you just end up learning it in a very sort of, not like a trial by fire, like it's hard or anything necessarily, but you're just kind of thrown into something and you're just like, well, figure it out or don't figure it out kind of thing. So a lot of that kind of stuff I think certainly was unexpected just because I didn't know how that was going to go, but just, other things about like, I don't know, how to send out a Zoom link properly so everybody shows up on time. Things like that were, very simple things that I was worried about that I probably didn't need to be worried about. But looking back, I can be like, it makes sense that I was concerned that I might not do that well, but in the end, it worked out.
Yeah, I think like I can echo that. AmeriCorps is a great entry-level position for anyone who, like, we're both early career professionals. You had graduated and then started this, and I did this during my senior year of college. And I really think it hones in your soft skills, because you can be super academically strong, but if you don't know how to apply that to a workforce, it's not going to work. So I think AmeriCorps gives you an opportunity to professionally develop while you also contribute back to the community. So community is really important in this role, but can you explain your perspective on why community should be important to everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that for me, just as a personal aside, I'm very interested in philosophy and establishing what I call a philosophy of life and how I want to exist as a person. And so how I look at the world is that everyone relies on society, very much so. Everything that you do when you wake up in the morning, everything that happens in your life is somehow connected to society. I remember, this is just a personal anecdote, I was talking with my aunt actually maybe a year or two ago, and she said to me, what's the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning? And it's a silly example, but she said, well, you go to the bathroom. And so you think about this, I know it's a silly example, but you think about this, and it's everything about that process involves somebody else. Somebody else put the bathroom there, somebody else put the water there, the water goes somewhere, down drains that somebody else built, somebody else manages that, so everything is tied in together. And it's the same for community. Everything is tied in with community. If you want to be a small business in a community, well, you need roads to get there. Yeah. If you want to be a small business in a community, you need people who are going to come, buy your stuff. If you want to be a church, you need people who are going to be there. You also need people who are going to build the place. You need landscapers, right? Everything is tied in to society. There is, to me at least, and this is, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I don't really believe in the idea that, individualism really exists. I think that everyone is reliant on society. The idea that you can be a self-made person, I think, is a bit of a myth, because no one is self-made. Everyone at some point had a parent or two, and everyone at some point is reliant on the work of other people. And I think that this type of work really highlights that and really highlights the importance of what we can do together is so much greater than what we can do on our own. Yeah,
I think that's a great point, and I think that's something that AmeriCorps really teaches people. Before I came into this role, I had no idea the work that goes into just everything. Like our role in MSU, we play such a facilitator role, and you really realize how much goes into connecting people, whether it's researchers or community members. And it takes work to even just facilitate relationships amongst the community. And I think it makes you appreciate the role every individual has.
Yeah. And to build on your point there, I think that one of the things that I was struck by was, I'd work with an organization for a little while, and then we'd be working with a different organization that was doing really similar work, and in my head I would be thinking, okay, well, these two groups, they must know each other. And then I start talking to the one organization about, oh, well, I'm doing organization or work with, organization B, and they're like, oh, we've never heard of them. I'm like, well, they're doing basically the same thing that you're doing. They're just doing it on the opposite side of the state or something. And so what you end up realizing is just how much, like you're saying, how much work has to go into facilitating these partnerships, because people don't know about all of the other great work that's happening. If you're on the west side of the state versus on the east side of the state, maybe you're not communicating with each other, right? Or even if you're in Lansing, you're not communicating with people in Detroit. I think that the way that this center operates is, as you're saying, very much as a facilitator and trying to collectively build our capacity. And so we bring in these partners and sort of say, hey, you all are doing this work already on your own, so let's do it in conversation with each other. Let's have a dialogue with each other about how we can do this work together. Rather than isolating and just doing, we're going to have one project on, for the west side, we're going to have one project for the east side, let's do a project for the whole state. Right, and obviously things can be local and targeted and things like that, but allowing these organizations to work together and streamlining that process, I think, is something that's super useful and something that the center here specifically, I think, does really well. And then I think that having AmeriCorps working at the center just allows them to, build capacity even more for people, because they really rely, I think, a lot on student researchers who are part-time. And so having full-time AmeriCorps volunteers who can come in and act as these facilitators and set up these meetings and reach out to partner organizations and really build these relationships, I think, is super vital.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And the reason we wanted to have this discussion today on this podcast is because we think that AmeriCorps service is something that everyone should consider. And if you're watching this and you're like, wow, like desk work sounds boring, I think it's important that everyone knows that there's all different kinds of service, and even if a year is not feasible, my roommate did 4 months of service, direct service, working at a food bank. So there's really all sorts of opportunities, and we really think it's something that people should consider. And we say that after a year of service with this experience. I think it's something we're both very grateful that we did.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that for me, coming out of college, I was sort of like, okay, well, I got this degree now, I have my interests, but it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to take an interest and then be able to type that into a search bar and find it as like a job. You might be interested in, I don't know, for me, I'm very interested in writing, for instance, but it's very difficult for me to then just go into Indeed or whatever and say, well, I want a job that, involves writing. So I think that what AmeriCorps really helps me do over this course of, over this year of service is figure out what I like and figure out the sort of environments that I want to be working in and figure out a lot about myself. And I think that for me, having graduated and then coming into AmeriCorps, not only was I able to learn all of the professional experience, but I was also just able to continue my own learning. I was able to just, keep growing as a person coming out of college and being able to be like, well, hey, I mean, I can read whatever book I want to read now. While at the same time, I'm also learning how to send an email properly. So, there's basic level skills, but then there's some more macro level skills that I think you can learn. And it really helps you establish, in your mind at least, this is the type of work that I want to be doing. Right. It gives me a year where I don't have to, it's a little bit of stability. I don't have to worry about, rent or something because I'm going to be able to afford it with the stipend, that kind of thing. It helps you with your loans at the end if you take that, or the cash award if you want to use that for down payment or whatever, what have you. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity that AmeriCorps presents recent graduates and even people like yourself who were still in school. I think that that's a really unique thing that AmeriCorps, you can have a full-time job while still being a student. I think is really, really cool.
So do you have any advice you want to offer to people who are looking for something to do in the realm of national service?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my biggest piece of advice is just think about why is it that you want to do this kind of work? What is it to you personally that makes community important?
Yeah.
Right. So try to figure out why it is that community is important to you, and then try to find the ways that you can serve your community in that way. To enhance. If community is really important to you because you really like the community garden, right? Try to find service opportunities that are surrounding that, right? Try to connect people to food banks and land banks and things like that allow people to use the assets that they have in their local community to enhance their community. So I think that the biggest piece of advice is figure out, not just, everyone will say, do your passion. I think that for this type of work, you want to figure out why it matters.
Yeah.
Why is it that your community matters? And even if you end up, if you're from California and you end up working in New York, that's fine. You can still figure out why, your community in California mattered to you, and you can apply a lot of that logic and that thinking to whatever community you end up working in. And I think that is a really good thing to do, not just for this kind of job, but also just as you're thinking about, what do you want to be as a person? What do you want to give back? You have this year of service, and it can't just be an empty year of service, right? So you want to go into it with intention and say, this is why I think serving is important, this is why I want to serve, and this is the type of community that I want to live in. So let me find a way to make that community happen. And you don't need to solve every problem all at once. It can be, you solve one problem in the entire year. You might not solve any, you might not see the end result of your work, and that can kind of be a little bit disheartening for some people. But I think that if you go in with that mindset of, this is the type of work that I want to be doing, this is the type of community that I want to be living in, how do I make that happen?
Yeah.
That, I think, is the right approach to have for this kind of position.
Thank you for sitting down with me today, Theo. I really appreciate you joining me, and I hope that everyone listening takes the time to consider doing an AmeriCorps role, whatever that may look like for them.
Thank you very much, Reagan. Pleasure being here.
Yep.
For more information, visit our website at ced.msu.edu or subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Thank you for listening, and go green.